Welcome back to Inside the Show. I'm Scuffy alongside Cougs. We got a special guest today with Ant Ortiz right here, and we are 2 weeks, well, less than 2 weeks remaining for MLB Show 22 to drop on April 1st if you have early access, or April 5th if you're just going with the regular edition. But that's here or there. Today, we have another huge topic as we've been going over each feature throughout these weeks leading up to MLB Show 22. Last week was a big one, and we got March to October and franchise. As we discussed, franchise was added late into the feature schedule. And why not have one of the best content creators that does franchise, does everything MLB The Show, um, and having Ant Ortiz. So, Ant, welcome to the show. Appreciate having you on Inside the Show today, and it's a pleasure, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
So, of course, today's subject is going to be regarding the latest feature being franchise to MTO. Today, we are going to be going over pretty much what they went over, and then just gather around what we thought about it, what we think this is going to lead into franchise for future years, what to expect from both modes, not just franchise, but March to October as well. And of course, there was also a great tidbit throughout the week during the community with Frisk sitting down with Livingston from SDS. So we'll definitely be going over that. But let's just jump right into franchise, shall we? We got the franchise added to the new feature, which I mean, we saw how the community was pretty much up in arms when we didn't have it on the schedule. There was a lot of things that is franchise getting ignored. There were some people that even thought franchise was just going to be deleted mode, and
Yeah.
let's say, I don't know about that, but that was kind of like at the tipping point, like what's happening to franchise. But they did add it to last week's feature. And I gotta say, before I ask you, Ant, and before we dig into it, when watching it as someone that doesn't really play as much as franchise, this is before. I mean, this is during when I was watching the feature, and then I'll tell you what I felt like after and just digging into a little bit more. When watching the feature and going over the new I guess features you would like to say. I mean, pun intended. Whether the ones that we're going to talk about with the trade metric and the contract improvements and so on for franchise. For me, like looking into and just from seeing from like outside viewing, it felt more like it was like a patch kind of thing. And it felt like how come they couldn't add this sooner? But the more I watched, the more I just develop, like, sit down and really think about it. It looks like it's pretty big stuff that the franchise community was looking for. It might not be flashy, quote unquote, but it's something that, like how they say, big under the hood type of thing. How, as you, as a franchise player, when going over just the topics itself, we'll dig deep more into it. Took the approach when watching it for the first time in the feature.
So I think that is like kind of a big stuff, like kind of the under the hood things, like the what was it, like the trade metric, contract improvements, just like logic in general. Because like that was kind of the big thing that was, I feel like, ruining franchise, because you'd see a lot of trades that didn't make sense or free agent signings that didn't make sense. So I've always been kind of that one person that said like, I would rather you fix what's currently in the mode, because there's quite a few like small things, kind of big things that need to be fixed, rather than going out and adding more onto it. Because I think once you start adding some more things, you're kind of just putting a band-aid over it and hoping it stays together. Because then it's like, oh, you've added these new things, but it might still end up breaking more. So for me to see that they were taking kind of like a, let's take a couple steps back, fix what we currently have before we start to add more into it, I think that was just the smart move from SDS.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, from those particular points I did, whether it be the trade metric, budget, contract, what stood out the most that you think was a glaring issue from going from one franchise, say from 21 into 22? Would it be the trade lot? Because myself
Yeah.
and Cougs, we were talking about. It's funny they brought up the Juan Soto thing
Mhm.
on the feature because myself and Cougs were going over that in particular. I think either a week or two ago, and I remember one example with Spoyer trading for Soto to KC. He put Savi in, and they traded. And there's some like other prospects. They traded for Soto, so you got Soto. It shouldn't been a deal that got accepted, but then the Nationals within spring training released Savi on just within 2 weeks, so he was
Mm.
able to re-sign Savi and legit negate the trade. So I thought just from like someone that's looking in, I thought the trade stuff was really important. But out of the either the trade metric, the budget improvements, contract, two-way players, or all season, how would you mark what was like the best thing to see, or is it just everything?
Well, I mean, everything, because it all kind of like works together. Because like
Mhm,
if you look at the trade metric, like once they start kind of improving the whole logic around that, I think that plays into other things. Because once player like you have better trades, you'll have better free agent signings because certain players will be targeted by certain teams. I think they even mentioned that like playoff teams will look to acquire more players, and then teams that are towards the bottom of the standings will look to trade away certain players. So like it just seems like from like a whole logical sense, like everything makes more sense, which is how it should be. And obviously being 100% realistic is not possible. I mean, look at some of the moves that have happened since the lockout ended. So, I mean, anything could really happen, but I just think for them to be a little bit more realistic is what we were all looking for. So, I mean, just the whole aspect of it being more logical. I think that's kind of the big thing. And then just kind of like looking at the points that you brought up, I think like the off-season improvements is like right behind it because there'd be days where you see a player get signed in free agency, and then literally the next day they would get traded away, which I don't know how many teams are doing that in real life. And then I think like budget and contract. And I think the two-way improvements was a small thing because it's really only one player that everyone's trying to use in Shohei. But
mhm.
like he was just unusable. You couldn't use him at all. So you had like a 1 in 100 chance of him giving you like a one good season out of his career. So I think for him to actually be usable now, I think it'd be pretty cool to see.
See, there you go, Kooks. You're all set with your boy Itani. You could reach the promised land with him and Trout. You know,
Is it time for franchise 46? And
yeah, I think
I
so.
it might be, man. Now, one thing I thought that was interesting what you were saying, Ant, is like, all of these changes that they've made, they're so big and so important to the mode, but obviously I don't know anything about game coding or game design, but these just seemed like things that naturally should be implemented in a franchise mode. These, the sense of urgency in the market by some of these teams that are competing, or the idea to sell if you're not going to be in a playoff spot and maybe try to get a return for some star players. Stuff like that feels like that should already be there. And I'm not, I don't know enough about franchise to knock SDS for certain things, but you know, if I was playing franchise and I was trying to get really immersed in the game mode and really immersed in the team that I'm trying to run and create and bring to a World Series, if I see moves that just don't make sense and I see things that just make me scratch my head, it's going to break that immersion. So yeah, I like that they've done this stuff, and I just thought it was interesting that that stuff is like the highlight of the feature premiere. You know what I mean? Like it's not a big new feature. It's not a big new like, side mode coming in with franchise. It's just literally improving the core of the mode, improving the systems, and then hopefully they'll be able to build on that. I just find it crazy that that stuff is still being implemented in a big franchise mode in 2022.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy, and I think if we kind of touch on the video with Frisk, when Nick Livingston mentioned that they took the prices out of like the ability to control prices in franchise because it literally had no effect on your budget whatsoever. I think it just goes to show that like clearly there was something in the coding that like just went berserk and it just doesn't work anymore. So I mean, this code has been worked on since day one of the first MLB The Show. And they've probably had different developers work on that same code. So everyone's working on it different ways. So there's going to be mix ups, there's going to be things that happen. Again, I don't know how coding works either, but I mean, that's just if you have different people working on the same kind of thing, there's going to be different ways of doing it. And so I think, there's going to be some hiccups along the way. And if people leave and then people take over, I still think there's going to be some issues there. So I agree that like these things probably should have been fixed earlier, but I think maybe they also kind of got into the whole thing of like let's try to maybe add something and see if that works rather than like let's fix it first. Because like I said, it's kind of like when you just throw a band-aid on it and hope it doesn't fall apart. So I think them taking these couple steps back, so I think that's when they can finally um kind of start to move forward now because they're finally fixing the issues that they currently have.
Yeah, and it's definitely smart for them because if they, like you said, if they try to put a band-aid on their stuff every single year, like nothing's going to get improved and we're back having the same conversations every 2 or 3 years about the mode. So, honestly, it may not be the sexiest additions for the franchise community, but they are necessary ones. And I hope that they can build on this stuff and continue to elevate it to make the mode like where it should be in a 2022 sports game.
Yeah, it's essentially a patch. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it's kind of like a long needed patch that we've been looking for. And like I guess when it was added to the schedule and it said that it was like updates or improvements that they put on the schedule. I mean, it literally is that. It's an improvement, it's an update rather than new features. And I think a lot of people just when they hear improvements or revamped or updated, they automatically assume that like these crazy new features are going to get added. So I think it's just more of an understanding of what's really going on and kind of like, I don't want to say tone down your expectations, but just kind of be a little bit more realistic on what can happen on a year to year basis and actually make it and implement it correctly.
Yeah. I do not envy SDS on any front. Like, dude,
Or
putting
any
out a
developer. Yeah.
yeah, putting out a yearly sports game has got to be some of the most stressful stuff because you have to prioritize what you're gonna, focus on for each individual mode, and you just know that at one portion of the community is gonna get, frustrated with some things. I don't envy them at all in that aspect.
I mean, even
Well,
like Diamond Dynasty stuff, where you add a certain legend, and it's just you still got people raising pitchforks because like it's not the person they wanted, and it's like,
Yeah,
all right, man, like the one person, just at least something happened, right? You know?
yeah, yeah.
no, you can't please everyone. To
Yeah.
go back to the coding stuff, just from personal experience, I'm not saying this is it for SES, but like my first company I was with, we had applications that were written, say, years before I was there. I'm on the infrastructure side, so I don't know the coding hands up, but I just remember there being such legacy code that there were some aspects to their application that they couldn't update, whether that was because of not having the experience enough of developers out there that know that legacy type of code, or if they update something, they don't know if they're gonna break something. So it's with seeing how franchise, I assume this is from when they started. I mean, who knows what it looks like from or what type of language it was written when it first started to what they do now. And that's why, like you mentioned with Frisk video with Livingston, he was kept on bringing the foundation, right? Like we're trying to build a new foundation or make sure the foundation is good to go. And that's where I think MTO comes in hand. Why that mode was not just first created to give it a different experience, but another mode where they could start fresh and be easier to fast track new additions, and we'll get to that momentarily. But that's just my grasp from it. I could be completely wrong about this, but just from IT standpoint, or just seeing from firsthand that there's some things that you just can't do because either you don't have the knowledge base, like you brought up, who knows how this was working in the past, and who knows what it would break it if I switch this to that. And that could be it, really, to franchise. And sometimes you play around with it, you think everything's going, and then all of a sudden you see all these bugs come up. And so there, but it's always a good state of how they are continuing to work on it. And I really think even with these under the hood editions, it could bring a whole new experience if it works as expected, right? That's the way I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
And that's what took me like it felt like a patch, but then looking into it more, it is kind of a patch still. Like I agree, but it's something that could still be game changing, which you wouldn't see at first hand until you start playing.
Yeah, and I think also like when everybody was talking about how bad the trades were, and it was like immediately they were like, okay, this is something that we need to fix. And for once, it was like a year turnaround where like that they actually like got back to us about like we're really making it a focus to fix this issue that you guys had such a problem with. So I think
Mhm.
hearing that also as a community is like kind of reassuring that they're listening, they're taking our feedback. Some things are going to take longer to fix than others, and that's understandable. But for them to actually like hear that this was the big issue, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, this needs to be fixed this year. I think that's kind of like reassuring to hear as a like a consumer of the game or a player franchise, because now it's like, all right, they know what we want to hear. They're actually listening. Now we can continue to give them feedback. Now we can continue to tell them what we'd like to see in the future, and hopefully they can implement it moving forward.
Oh, exactly. Now, speaking of like the Frisk and Livingston interview, which was fantastic, by the way. If you guys haven't checked it out, goes to Emmett.Frisk, his YouTube channel.com/Emmett.Frisk. You'll find it there. It's about like, I think it was about 30 minutes long,
Mhm.
somewhere around there. Um, After seeing that entire video, how 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 did the franchise community take that? And because sometimes uh, they'll feel neglected through this whole time, which I think was kind of um, I think it was kind of necessary to have that type of movement, which we discussed previously. And but after seeing that transparency between, because Frisk didn't shy away from his questions, he pretty much asked what I think the franchise community wanted to ask him. But after that video, is it like, okay, not like you said, just positive reinforcement, like, okay, they're not removing the mode. He legit said that we're not removing the mode. I still can't believe people thought that. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess a lot of people thought MTO was going to become the franchise, which we'll get to. But just the overall aspects or vibe you got from after that video with Frisk.
I think I mean, I can see why people are still going to be pretty pessimistic about it just because it's taken this long for them to
Yeah.
kind of address the whole, elephant in the room of like why franchise wasn't initially on the schedule, why hasn't there been changes over the last few years up until this point. And so, I mean, there's always going to be those pessimists, but I think just a majority of the people who are playing franchise are going to be pretty happy with it. I mean, I guess it kind of like for me, it definitely like reaffirmed in like what I was kind of thinking in like the whole March to October is kind of like that new foundation, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
but also just, the way Frisk really kind of didn't shy away from those points on like, okay, what's the vision? What are you planning on doing? Like, where's franchise going? Where's March to October going? I think that was something that just the community needed to see because it was one of those where Frisk is a guy who has like had experience in relations, so he kind of understands both sides of like development side and also as a consumer. So for him to put those questions out there and really hit those points, I think it's really good to see that. And I think with the people in the franchise community, I think it's just gonna really open their eyes to see what's actually coming finally.
Yeah, I agree. And now like transitioning to March, October, there was a lot of new. I mean, from what they showed from March, October, so we got pretty much it was all off season based from my guy. It was pretty much targeted free agents where they have different segments of your free agency, when different priorities for players that you want to sign. You could put them in top, medium, or low, or just top three players that you want. Seeing these type of updates and seeing what March, October get is, I just feel like it's like the ingredients that were later be contributing to franchise. That's
Mhm.
the way I'm getting it from now, is when watching the feature and then watching the video with Frisk and Livingston and just taking it all in. Um, is that what you get to, I think that's what you're getting to, like,
Yeah.
MTO is, like, where they get to have, like, create these new additions, and then once they feel like franchise is in a good state and March, October is a good state, they kinda combine the 2 because now March, October gets multi-year,
Mhm.
years. They didn't really go over that. They were kind of focusing a lot more onto,
Like
that
the other editions.
off
Yeah.
season. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, because I believe you're supposed to get custom, teams now?
Yeah, teams,
I'm not sure if they
jerseys.
went over that?
They, like, briefly showed it on screen. They, like, barely talked about how you can do
Yeah, that
multi-season. It was like they said it and they're like, "Oh, now here's the off-season editions that we're gonna talk to you about for the next like 30 minutes or whatever."
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's more of a March to October. Now that we have multi seasons, I think it's gonna just be like March to October is franchise moving forward.
Mhm.
Honestly, if they change the name franchise to March to October, I think that's even a cooler name, anyways.
It is.
But I think if that's the new franchise mode going forward, obviously you can't get rid of franchise mode right now because then there really will be people that are upset because people
Yeah.
like to play every single game. But I think um, now knowing that like it's been kind of said that like this is the way to implement some new things, and as we continue to build on it, that's, or I shouldn't say we because I'm not part of SDS, but as they
Yeah.
continue to build on it, then it can continue to add more and more and more, and then that'll eventually turn into multi-season. You can play every game, you can
Mhm.
essentially make it franchise mode. So I think that's the smart way to do it, is like basically just start from scratch, and that's what they're doing. So I think it's awesome.
Now the sliders they went over, was that just for franchise or was that for March, October?
The injury one, I think.
Yeah, just
I don't
injury
I
and
don't I don't remember. I would assume
because
it's for all gameplay because it's for like sim and then also
okay.
for in game, but I didn't
S
100%
but
catch
I
that
just
part.
bring that up because that's good to have that customization, and you can see maybe in the future with March, October, then you'll be able to play, say, 162 games and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I mean, if they made franchise into hypothetically March, October, and, like, not combined the 2, but just bring the
Yeah.
elements from March, October to franchise and have the storylines to go with it, that's gonna be like what we see in 2K, like, developing, like, interactions and stuff like that, the customization, it just
Mhm.
creates that storylines for you during franchise. I thought that'd be kinda cool.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and like Nick Livingston even said, like he really wants to make sure that like this is the best sports game possible. Like this is, he
mhm,
wants MLB The Show to like really be something. So I mean, like they really don't want to release anything until like it's you know user, like it's actually working.
yeah,
Yeah,
polish,
yeah,
pretty much.
exactly. And so and obviously they don't really want to give a timeline, right? Because if they're like, oh, we're gonna bring it out next year and it doesn't happen, everyone's gonna freak out again. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean the interview was great, and it was cool to see. And I think going back to like the whole March to October off season stuff, it kind of gave me like NCAA football vibes with like
that's wild. I was
the the,
literally gonna bring that.
the
That's what
recruiting
it did
the
to me.
recruiting board. I think that was
I
really
was
cool. So I
yep,
I would love to see that in franchise. Even if they could expand it, I think having it in like the scouting part for the draft would be really cool too.
yeah,
So like even if they could make it a simplified version like NCAA, where you have a certain amount of points where you can scout a player, I think there's definitely a lot of possibilities. So I'm excited to see how they kind of build on that and where they can kind of take that kind of stuff.
yeah, I legit, like, as you like, watching, I was like, "This really feels like" because we know how many MLB creators kinda shifted to
Hmm.
NCAA 14 this year, and it just really reminded me of the
Yeah.
scouting system, and in the best way possible too, with the interest level, if you have
Yep.
just one so if you guys haven't seen the future yet, the new feature for March, October is pretty much target free agents in the off season. You could set up different priorities. If you say they put example of Freddie Freeman for their main priority, so you get the most interest after every week. I believe you get like
Mhm.
8% interest if you
Something like
just
that.
leave them there. But if you have all three, it's less. It's divided between those three. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I believe
Mhm.
I'm right. And then they went through the offseason of that. There was kind of cool stuff. There was like last chance opportunity. They did that with so I mean no Tyler Rogers gave them a last opportunity to sign him. They said yes, and then we saw the big reveal. They pretty much took the DD review into March, October, where you will have the walkout screen, and then it'll be the suspense if he signed with your team or not. And they were able to see that I think they were the Blue Jays during that sim.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
saw
something like
Blue
that.
Jays logo and sign. I thought that was pretty cool too. It's
Yeah,
like the little things.
yeah, and so it's like the percentage of interest that you have is literally the percentage that you have to sign them. So if you have a 60% interest, you have a 60% chance of signing him. So I
Mhm.
think it's cool to see those things being implemented, and then also just um the like the whole like types of players that you can go after. There was like an on base machine, there was a power pitcher, finesse pitcher. So it kind of seems like they're starting to work on like other details about types of players too, which could end up being, you know, like the trade block or other things like that. So, or even again, it goes back to scouting with the draft, which I feel like the draft is kind of one of those things that is currently in franchise that like really needs a tune up. I feel like
Okay.
it's um so it'd be cool to see how they kind of implement those other like specific types of players and other things in the mode as well. Because like I don't even think there's a draft in March to October right now. I think it just automatically gives you players.
Oh, does it? Okay.
I think
Yeah,
so, yeah.
'cause, that's why I thought they would go over more about the multi-year stuff like that.
So yeah, with
Was it
March to October, I think they just give you like auto generated players. Like you don't get to draft anybody. That's like the CPU handles the draft for you, and
okay.
you just get the new players added to your roster at the end of the year.
Alright. Hmm.
hmm
What are you gonna do? Now I've seen, like, all the new additions, like, to March, October, to the franchise. What are going forward, what do you or it could be you or just as the franchise community, would like to see going forward for a franchise, like or even if it's, like, little additions. Like,
Yeah.
I know RGS is big on the trading where you only could add 3 players,
Yeah.
and you would like to add more. Is there much more stuff on top of that? I mean, now we have international signings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I'm sure that would be love to see, but
Yeah. So the CBA stuff, obviously, you know, because it was so late to this year,
Mhm,
I don't expect a lot of those changes to be added. So like having those things updated would be kind of like are going to be cool. But yeah, I think scouting in general is pretty basic
yep,
for the draft, and like I've kind of touched about that already. Um, but yeah, the trade, I think trades being only 3 players is kind of a bummer because I mean, if you look at how many trades are being made now, I feel like it's like 3, 4, 5 players, and a lot of them are prospects. I think once you start adding like a player to be named or cash, I think that's when it gets a little complicated. And I can understand if that's never really implemented into the mode, just because like once you start throwing cash in, like then it's just a numerical value that like how do you really work that into it? The budget system is a little bit of a mess. So hopefully that kind of gets like how do you make money? How do you lose money? How do you like how is that determined? Um, I would like to see like there's a lot of things. Like there's I could probably like open up a whole document and it'd be like a Bible thick. But
yeah,
no, I just think like the whole logic part was like my big issue. And like, yeah, going forward, I'd love to see a lot more stuff added, but I think we kind of have to be a little bit more realistic with it. Like trades
mhm,
would be a big one. I think the draft needs an overhaul. And then just kind of I would like to see maybe like a I don't want to say like a coach skill tree, but like something where it has a little bit more of like you actually have a little bit more like a contract as a coach because right now
okay.
you can't get fired. Like
Oh, okay,
the only way you lose your job is if you don't meet your goal in that 3-year window that you're originally given. So even if you're like 0 and 162 your first season, they'll keep you around for the next 2 years. They don't care.
okay,
So I would like to see like if you don't meet these goals by season one, you could get fired. And maybe if you make those goals, then you know your budget goes up, or you know your
mhm,
reputation goes up, or something. So something where like there's like a like I guess maybe a skill tree or something where like maybe you meet those goals, you get certain points added to your skill tree, and then maybe you could sign players easier, trade players easier, or scout players easier, things like that. Possibly a fog of war mode would be
that
cool
I love,
where you don't
yeah,
know the stats of every player, where you actually have to like go out and scout those players because you in real life you don't know how every player performs, and you have to go out and scout those players to understand what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. You know, the shift obviously now but is like kind of banned, but you know, why how far should we shift over, should we shift at all, kind of stuff like that. So
yeah.
I would like to see that implemented in the future. But yeah, there's tons of things that could be implemented, but I think the big thing was fixing currently what's wrong with it
Yeah,
because there's so much in the mode that was an issue. So yeah, I'm
yeah,
excited to see what they do going forward.
I'm ho I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this fixes everything you need.
Yeah, I mean, and from the interview with Frisk, I mean, Nick Livingston brought up like Tim Barnes, and it sounds like he's like super dedicated to everything. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that, like, you know, SDS, whenever, like, we talk to SDS, they always say, we're always listening. We might not always respond and everything like that, but we're always listening. Some people like to think that SDS doesn't see, the tweets or doesn't care, or is like, which is not the case. They see everything.
Mhm.
So I think with the influx of people this year that really kind of made a stand for franchise mode and really kind of brought that to the forefront, saying, like, Diamond Dynasty's been getting all the updates, been getting all this love. Why not franchise mode with the additions that they've made, or I'm sorry, the improvements that they've made of, kind of cleaning up some of these really core issues of the mode. And then, like you said, Tim on the development side, just being very passionate, along with Nick. Like, I do think there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a matter of how long is it going to be? Is it going to
Yeah.
be, is it going to be 3 years before you start seeing like a fog of war feature? And I'm not saying that's the most important feature, but just the general idea of like these big new features, these big new additions. How long are they, like, how long are they, or how far out are they looking, is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah.
do they have a 3-year plan? I know this is all foundational stuff, but like, I think that's the thing that most people want to know is like, am I going to have to wait till MLB 25 to get the true franchise experience that I have been waiting for? Or, should I just be playing March to October? Like, I think that's really where a lot of people are at right now.
Yeah, and it is frustrating. Like obviously, like it's frustrating as especially as a content creator, right? Because like you would love to see these new additions because it's going to bring the hype, it's going to bring in new eyes, it's going to bring in new viewers. But even just as like just the normal consumer, like I remember growing up and like I was like, oh man, I can set concession prices, hot dog prices, I can upgrade my stadium. There were so many things that were in franchise modes, but at the same time, like growing up, there wasn't online gameplay up until I think I was like late, like fifth grade, sixth grade.
Yeah.
That's when kind of like online gameplay really started to like take off. So, I mean, then, resources kind of split. And so, like, I'm not saying like resources are split at SDS because they obviously have teams that work on each mode. But I think it's just kind of a different era of gaming now where like online gaming is the more popular choice between gamers. So I, and going back to your point of because I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but like how far out are these changes and these wants and needs? Like obviously it'd be cool to have it next year, but like realistically, we don't know. And SDS isn't going to give us an exact date because again,
Yeah.
that also adds more pressure onto them. So it does get frustrating to have to wait and wait and wait. But as a consumer, what else can you really do besides continue to give them feedback and tell them what these issues are that you want fixed and what kind of is that big issue that you would like to see fixed first and foremost.
Yeah. And going off what you said about, like, this era of gaming is different than when, like MVP '05's owner mode was around.
Mhm.
But speaking of that, it, for both of you guys, do we think that online franchise is ever going to make a return, or do we think that custom leagues is kind of that void, or the thing that's trying to fill that void?
It's funny because Frisk asked that to Livingston,
Mhm.
his online franchise coming back, and he's like, "It's pretty much we hear you, we just don't know when that will be back." Right?
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Yeah. And it kind of sounds like they're more focused on improve like making the mode as good as it can before they're like, all right, let's release it to have that online feature again. And again, we saw like how the servers are. Like once you add that thing online franchise again, I think it's just going to cause more chaos. I mean, servers are a mess. So
But if we're assuming that for the next 2 or 3 years, franchise is gonna get these really nice under the hood, improvements, and hopefully some cool new features coming within these couple years. I think that would actually, like, at some point, I do think they would look into bringing that back because, they've got all these different features. They've got this idea for the mode. I think they would like to look back at online franchise and say, I think we can create uh, an experience that's not only new, but with all of these changes to the mode, it's going to be an improved mode. It's going to be something that people are going to get way more immersed in. And especially when you're playing with your friends, people are going to be, excited to play that stuff. Cause I'm just asking this because watching the feature premiere, I would say like 70% of the comments I saw were
Yeah.
just online franchise all through the chat.
Oh,
And I
it's
was like,
crazy.
dude, it always blows my mind. I'm just like an ignorant Diamond Dynasty guy, but it always blows my mind at how many people want online franchise back. Because I just,
Yeah.
I never really played it back in the day. But
No,
like just seeing this community and voice it so heavily, it blows my mind. It's crazy.
and then I
I will
always
tell
go
Oh,
ahead,
go ahead.
no, no, go
No,
ahead.
I would just tell you, I was main on like we discussed before, I was a main online franchise guy for first for MVP.
Mhm.
We did it through peer-to-peer connection and did it through like forums with all the off-season stuff. But then once MLB The Show came out, that's all I played for 13, 14, probably 15. And then I got more into DD. But the community is very dedicated to
Yes.
that. And they are, trust me, I mean, when I had my WhatsApp, when we did, it was like Discord back in the day when we had all the chats that my phone would blow up just on based on if I'm not responding in time for a trade offer, if I'm not responding in time for a get a game in, they are as passionate as ever. And what it also does, it creates a community within a community. It's like you have this connection with these all the guys. You get to learn about them because we're all in this just whole
Mhm.
group chat, just talking around, talking crap, and just waiting for the next season. So I see why. I still don't know. I think they're kind of. I'm not sure how many people play online leagues right now, compared to that, like how online franchise is. But the having the other sports games having that type of mode
Yeah.
is just going to expedition like, just be more I don't
People are
know,
gonna
just
want it
be more
more.
alarming.
Yeah.
Yeah, be more alarming, for having it in that movie show.
Yeah, and like I never really was like one that did online franchise, and it's crazy how so many I'll be like streaming and people are like, "How come you never like thought about doing like online franchise when it was around with like other content creators?" And I was like, "You got to realize like setting up stuff with content creators is some of the most difficult stuff ever." And it's like, and then especially if you're like, let's get 30 of us to try to do it,
Oh
and
my
it's just chaos, like trying to get a trade done or set up a game, and then like you're like, well, I gotta record a video, and then like it's so chaotic, and like I know a lot of people in Madden do it, and like I'm not knocking them, but I always feel like it's like also Madden's like an NFL season's a lot shorter than the MLB season. So fitting in those games are going to be a lot quicker than a whole MLB season. But like I always feel like I see like three, four, five different drafts every couple months because I don't know if they don't finish them or what, but like just trying to schedule stuff with other content creators is so difficult. And I guess it's a little bit different for just people who are like having the normal online franchise stuff. Like you said, Scuffy, like that you had this whole community built around it where like everyone was like blowing up your phone if you weren't on time for a game.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of like the original like online gaming for sports before we had ultimate teams or like Diamond Dynasty and stuff like that. That was like a way to play other people and play your friends and stuff like that. So I mean, I would like to see it back just because clearly it's a big want, but for me it's not the end of the world if it doesn't come back within the next year or two.
I mean, I still remember moments. Like, I remember it was, I think, 15. Johan Santana was still in the game. I signed him as a free agent. He started in AAA for the Orioles for me, and I was able to use him as my ace. He just somehow his potential went up as I use it. Like sure, like with those online franchise players, they probably remember like stuff like that too.
Oh
So it's
yeah.
just like I want that back. I want that
Mhm.
feeling back. And I remember fin- kind of finessing player people with the trades, trying to get a prospect, and all of a sudden my prospect does good, theirs doesn't, and it brings that banter that's kind of cool. But like I said, I just don't know. I think they're just the loudest right now. Well, I think
Mhm.
everything, how that we saw what the franchise doing, and then we saw they're like, they responded to it. Now a lot of people are gonna be loud about online franchise to see if we get anything, but
And
we'll see.
like with that, it kind of brings up the whole like online franchise. It's like it's kind of for those people who like just don't want to grind out Diamond Dynasty all the time. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I got to grind out this program or this event, or like I don't have to face this like cheeser on ranked seasons who only wants to bunt and get him
Yeah, that
rundowns on the base paths. Like you're facing your friends. You have that like, oh, I swindled you for this trade. I get to rub it in a little bit, like that kind of stuff where it's like it is competitive, but at the same time, it's not this huge sweat fest that like ranked has, kind of become, or like at the same time, people just like quit on you, in ranked.
Yep.
So I think it gives you that competitive feel, but you also get to play the mode that you really want to. So like I totally see that, and I can see why like it's such a huge, huge want, because like there still are a lot of people that want to play like franchise and offline modes, but have that other like that friends or other people that you play with.
Yep.
Um, but when you mentioned Johan Santana in AAA, it made me think of another thing that franchise really needs is the fix to like progression and regression.
yeah.
That now is like my number one. It made me think about that because like it is a mess. Like when Acuna at 29 years old is looking like a 45-year-old guy who forgot how to play baseball, like that shouldn't happen. Like one of the best young players in the world is like, oh, I don't know how to play baseball anymore. It just shouldn't be like that. I think Vladdy it happens too as well. So that's a big thing that really needs to be fixed, just because it's like that doesn't happen. Or like players are like 28 years old and they're still sitting in like AAA and they're like 90 overall or something. There's a lot of issues with how players progress and regress in the mode. So hopefully that'll be a thing that gets fixed soon.
Yeah, I remember I see that a lot of that is I mean, even for Trout, I believe I've seen that for.
Yeah, so it's like there's just like a bunch of different weird things. Like sometimes it's like right when they hit their potential, they'll start to fall off, or they hit a
Mhm.
certain amount of service time. It's weird. But then there'll be times where I've seen like Acuna play to like he was 54 and he was perfectly
Jesus.
fine and he just kept going. I think someone made a Reddit post about it. I think you sent that to me, Scuffy, about
I
the
think
Reddit
it
post.
sounds familiar as you say it,
Yeah,
like
the
how
dude hit like 1,000 home runs or something. I was like, what
yeah,
is going on?
more than Julio Franco, man. I
Yeah.
mean, jeez.
I did a sim with Babe Ruth. I got him to play longer than he actually stayed alive in real life. I think it was like 54, 55 or something like that. It was ridiculous. Sometimes bugs like that happen. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? But yeah, this is a lot of fun talking about this. It's always eye opening. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way, Cooks, when we just talk about franchise and MTO stuff because we're primary Diamond Dynasty guys, especially throughout the last couple of years. I mean, so you learn a lot more as we go on. We had Mills and Frisk on last year. We have you on this year, and I feel like I still learn each time I hear about franchise and or March to October of MLB The Show. So
And I mean, I know a lot of people have been like turned away from franchise just because it's not the same as like what they played growing up, or just because of the way it's been kind of neglected over the last few years. So hopefully with the way that it gets fixed and like these new changes happen, hopefully more people will come to it. But like we've kind of talked about, like it's kind of a shift in how gaming is now. So I don't know. I'm excited for franchise. Clearly they have a vision. It's just like you said, Kooks, how long is it going to take for them to implement it? Yeah.
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think we got everything that we today. We also, I think we never discussed the new legend
Nope.
because
Did
we
not.
weren't here last week, right?
Yep. Yeah,
That
we
was
we recorded early last week.
yeah, we recorded earlier, so that's why we didn't get to the new legend. But how about Euclid? They showed during the feature Kevin Euclid, Joni, the Greek god himself, the king of walks. I don't know what else I could call him, but
How did they make a walk look so hype?
I know.
How, how did they do that?
They were like, "This is what this guy's known for. We're gonna make sure like this is the coolest thing ever."
Pretty much. Yeah. They were
was
taking advantage of that entire nickname.
was he the
Oh yeah,
one that wasn't like he had a fake name on MVP, or was that Veritek? There was somebody that was on the Red Sox
No,
that
Euclid was what? No, yeah, Euclid, Kevin Millar, and Barry Bonds, I
okay.
believe.
Millar had
Um,
a fake name?
Yeah,
yeah, Kevin Millar had a fake name, I
yeah.
believe, from what I
Ah, I don't even
remember.
remember that. Jeez.
Um, that's those are the names that pop in my head. I could be completely wrong, but I believe it was those 3 because they weren't signed with they weren't associated with
Yeah.
the MLBPA. Um, so yeah.
Let's see if we can find it.
But yeah, it's nice to have Euclid in the game.
Mm.
I thought he was alright, legend. I don't know, out of 1 to 5 here, Cougs. Come on, man. Is that that's a 3 for me.
Yeah,
Maybe.
he's like a 2 or a 3 in my
Yeah.
opinion. Like, he'll be cool when, you start doing like all-time teams. You get
Mm.
to throw
Oh, yeah.
Varitek on the all-time Red Sox. Like he has to be on that team. So that'll be nice. But, do I think he's gonna get used over a guy like Jimmy Fox or a guy like, a finest Salvador Perez? Probably not. But
Yeah.
I'm all for adding guys in that are gonna help build teams and build like,
Yeah.
the legend pool. So yeah, I'm cool with it.
Like outside of like the big names like Bonds, A-Rod, Jeter, and then Ted Williams is out now. I feel like
Mhm.
what other like big names could they add that would really be like, wow, we got that legend added to the game. Like
Yeah,
I
they're
think
They
they're
confirmed
starting to run
Randy.
out.
yeah, I mean like so I think now it's just like having those guys like like Euclid or like Morneau and stuff like that. I feel like it's more of like a team legend now, where it's like kind of like a city legend, where it's like
Mm.
it may not be the biggest hype for everybody, but for that fan of that team, it's probably like, oh, that's pretty cool that we got Euclid in the game, or like like a Sosa if they could do that with the Cubs. Like Cubs fans,
Yeah.
oh man, I would be holy cow, I'd lose it if Sosa was in the game. But like
That was
stuff like
actually
that.
Cougs' prediction, right?
Yeah, that was my
So
prediction for the Cubs. Yep.
for the Cubs, yeah. Speaking of the Cubs, you'll get to play with your new addition here, Ant, with Suzuki.
That'd
So
be
that
cool.
should be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really excited about the Cubs in general, but like that was cool.
But
I
hey,
wasn't.
hey,
I saw they had a meeting with him, and I was like, oh man, cool, we're having a meeting. And then
uh-huh.
next day, it was like, oh, they signed, and I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Like
So,
what?
all right. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Last time we had a like foreign player that we signed was like Kosuke Fukudome, and that didn't really pan out. So I'm hoping things go a little bit better. But yeah,
I liked what I saw from him in offseason. And
mhm.
hey, I mean, he chose to wear number 27 because he loves Mike Trout. So
That was a funny
just
clip.
gonna enter
Yeah.
that.
That's a phenomenal clip.
Mike Trout, I
Yeah.
love you. Yeah,
Yeah. Same, bro.
yeah,
Same.
yeah. But yeah, I think the having like legends at the beginning, like a Euclid, or like maybe just like lower rated legends at the beginning of the year, like those
Oh,
low
yeah.
rated diamonds. I think those would be perfect to kind of start throwing out at the beginning of the year, just for like content. Just because I feel like sometimes we don't even get those other legends, and they'll be like, "Oh, we're at the end of the game cycle. Here's a 85 rated."
So pretty much what you're saying is Jonathan Nurkoy and Shane Victorino didn't do for you for that
No,
event.
no, give me that at day one, and I'm okay with it. Because like Shane Victorino's kind of slappy and works day one, but in playoffs, I'm not looking for a 85 Shane Victorino at all.
Yep.
So, and then we got a tease today as well. I believe they said it, everyone would say it was Oracle Park. I have no clue who it is. I can't tell.
I
People are saying he has a mustache, and then I saw JP Gaming actually put a Randy Johnson photo,
Yeah, I saw
and
that
it kind
one.
of looked legit. Maybe
Mhm.
they're finally confirming Randy because we have no clue where he is right now.
Yeah. I've seen a lot
So
of like theories around it, like maybe it was just like a team issue or something. But yeah, I mean, Randy will be cool. I mean, just a tall, lanky guy throws like 100 miles an hour and lefty. It's gonna be my nightmare. I'm never gonna be
Yeah.
able to hit something like that.
that's gonna be so much fun to use him.
I'm so excited to use him. I'm terrified to face him.
Yeah.
Exactly,
I mean, I couldn't
which
hit
is good.
lefties to begin with, so now I'm just gonna be like, all right.
Yeah.
That might be the time where I'm finally like, all right, quit. I'm done. It's just
It's over.
yeah,
I don't blame you. I mean,
yeah.
we'll see him. We'll probably see him from the start too, because we had Pedro early on with
Mhm.
TA1, right? So maybe we'll see him early on like that too. So it
Yeah.
might just be from the start. I was thinking to myself, who's gonna be the next Corey Kluber? Who's the next Edward Cabrera or Kershaw this year? And we don't know who that is yet, but
Yeah. I just
someone's out there,
I just hope
and then
we get to
someone's
the
gonna be
point.
that next card, and we're gonna be
Yeah.
like, "Oh god."
I just hope we get to the point where like change-ups are good. You know, you can throw curveballs and it's not just like that's a home run. I'd
Mhm.
love to just have that pitch mix and it's more about pitching rather than, oh, I'm gonna throw you a sinker. Here's a cutter. You know, that the same kind of meta stuff.
Yeah, that's why I think they were utilizing the circle change in the tech test a lot.
Mhm.
Um, Shy because of the drop it probably gives
Yeah.
or the break it gives off that, more so a regular changeup, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
Same with a two-seamer, I want a two-seamer to really feel
Yeah.
like a two-seamer.
So besides like Euclid, the one they teased, what was the other legend that they mentioned?
So we got who we got so far? We got Randy.
We
I
got
mean,
Randy.
no, Randy
Wait,
was in the trail.
It
We
was like
got,
first
Howard.
one and then it disappeared. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we got Howard,
we got Ryan
Mauer,
Howard,
Morneau.
Kurt Gibson, Mauer Morneau. We got Musina. We
Yeah,
got
and that's it. That's it. Oh, that's it.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
We're
then
not talking
Euclid, but we said besides Euclid.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we're just not talking about that second baseman.
Oh
So,
yeah, oh yeah,
we
yeah, yeah. We're not talking about the guy from Philly. No, no, no. I forgot about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
I
So
mean,
yeah.
again, it's like those names that are like, unless you're a fan of that team, I feel like you're not getting too excited about. Like I know Shelfie's losing his mind over Ryan Howard right now. I see him like tweet about it. I feel like almost every week now.
Speaking of which, and how often do you do franchise with like legends? For either
Maybe
for video or whatever, but like do you do like rebuilds or like
maybe
fantasy
like,
drafts and stuff like that?
maybe like twice a year.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, so like I'll do it at the beginning of the year just to kind of like I'll do a fantasy draft with legends just to kind of see like, all right, what could happen, like who's actually gonna like pop off, and then sometimes I'll do like an all time sim just to like who has that best team, and it's always interesting to see what players randomly just do really well, especially because sim on franchise is so weird. Sometimes you'll have like Ricky Weeks all of a sudden's winning MVP. So you're like, okay, sure, all right. And then some pitchers that you expect to do really, really well are just garbage. And I mean, at the same time, they're playing some of the best players of all time. But yeah, I mean, I don't really venture into it much. A lot of people want to see like all time rebuilds and stuff. But then I just feel weird like trading legends because I already know what legends are going to do well, right? Like, all right, I'm trading
Mhm.
for Bonds for the 14th video in a row now. Like, because
Yeah.
I know he's
Yeah.
about to hit me 70 home runs. So I don't know.
You brought like, bringing that up, that's another thing I would love to see in franchise draft classes.
Mhm.
You see it in the NBA, NFL. I love what Bengal does when he relives, um, from a particular era.
Yeah.
So,
So like, yeah, that is something that I would like to see. Because a lot of people actually have like certain rosters from like 2010.
mhm,
And that was a video that I wanted to do where I wanted to resim the decade. And so obviously if I did that, I would have to go through it and I would have to like edit all the players every year that
uh-huh,
they joined the team. So like in 2010 or 2011, like Mike Trout with the Angels, I'd have to edit him. Tatis joined the Padres, whatever year that was. I'd have to edit him or the White Sox, whatever, you know. And so like I have to edit every player. And then it's like I can't do every single player because like that's just ridiculous. You know, I'm not trying to add
yeah,
Mark Appel, even though, you know, he was like a top 5 pick, whatever. And so
Yeah.
it's just that would be cool to have those draft classes. Also, sometimes like people are just like super lazy with the rosters that they create. And I feel bad, but like some people will be like, I made a really good roster. And then I go and they use like a legend that's not even the right year. They'll be like taking I think like Torrey Hunter and they'll throw him on a 2010 roster, but it's like a 2015 Torrey Hunter. And I'm like, it's not the right age. You're not even looking at the right time. And I'm like,
mm,
oh, now I got to find a Torrey Hunter. And he does it for like 10 legends just because it's the easier way to do it. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that like I feel like with correct rosters and draft classes like that, there's a lot of potential for some really good videos. So
yep.
it'd be cool to see what happens. But again, how long is that going to take to implement?
We'll see, man. We'll see.
We shall. Yeah, that should be doing for us today. I think we covered everything for today. And where can everyone find you? On Twitter, on
Uh,
any social?
the Ant Ortiz. It's all the same.
Everything, Twitter,
Yeah, yeah,
YouTube,
super
Twitch,
easy.
everything. You
Yeah,
heard it. Ant Ortiz, and we'll definitely have it in the description of this YouTube video, so make sure to check that out and give Ant a follow, over all of his socials. Once again, Ant, it's a pleasure to have you on today, enlightening us with more franchise information and just learn about it more, so I really do, appreciate having you on today,
appreciate you
and,
having me
hope
on. And then, unfortunately, RGS couldn't make it. That was
yes,
fun.
our
Yeah,
we
that
did
would have.
plan to have RGS
Yeah.
today, but he was, not feeling so well, so hopefully he feels better, and we'll definitely have him on a future episode and
Mhm.
probably bring you back as well, so, you're always welcome, come on.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, anytime. Cougs, for next episode is gonna be the week of release. So we'll have Road to Show talk about, and then we'll probably be talking about the hype about what's going to happen with the Diamond Dynasty feature after that. And then we are there. It's going to be April 1st. Before you know it, we'll be here. Oh, playing by at least midnight for me, April 1st, 9 for you. And it's
Imagine waiting until April to play the game, dude. Imagine.
It's crazy that it's so close, but yet I'm like, oh man, it's so far. I'm like,
I'm
it is.
literally recording 4 videos tonight, so I have 9 days off. I can't wait. It's gonna be sick.
See, you're thinking
I'm
smart right
thinking
there.
way ahead, man. I'm
Oh,
ready.
you're thinking smart there. But yeah, next week we'll definitely be talking about Road to Show, and then we'll be on towards release day. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. So hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Once again, follow Ant on all of socials. It's in the description below. We'll broadcast it on our Twitter account, which is actually Inside the Show PC. So if you're not following our Twitter account, it's Inside the Show PC. You follow my boy Kooks at Kooks46. I'm at Scuffy McGee TV. Make sure to hit a thumbs up on today's video at Inside the Show on YouTube. And we'll see you guys next week with Road to Show news on Inside the Show.